It stinks. Why is that now? Ed. Sorry. We're live having some camera difficulties, but wanted to get into this, wanted to run through some things. Saw a post on LinkedIn earlier today that just kind of got me up and going. Uh, it talked about um, how do you load data from Power BI into SQL Server? And for starters, technically speaking, um, let's see, who is this guy? Uh, Antrikish. Antrikish. I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. I apologize. You are spot on. He is technically correct. This is how you load data from Power BI into SQL. And so that's what we're going to be live streaming about today. So first off, I want to start with thank you all, or for anyone who's joining me on this live stream, or for anyone who's watching the recording of this. Thank you for tuning in and watching what what I'm going through and talking about. I appreciate it. My name is Chris Wagner. I'm the founder creator of Kratos BI.com, home of the data gods. Kratos BI was purposely designed to highlight all of the great and incredible work out in the community. So I don't want anyone to think that I am not a huge supporter of the work that's done inside the community, the work that people do, and especially people like Venkat. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your name again. Anna Krish. Thank you for taking the time to make this video, to see this as a need. I really do. Technically, this is a proficient way to do this. So I do want to be clear that as I start to get into this rant, I am in no way, shape, or form knocking what you have done in the solution that you have put out here. The reason I am doing this live stream is because under almost every situation, the answer is a no. Okay, the answer or the answer to the question, can I load data from Power BI into SQL Server? While technically the answer is yes, for the purpose, you have to ask why. Why is someone wanting to load data from Power BI into SQL Server? And that is something that we are currently, that is something we should just straight up we shouldn't be doing. Okay, and the reason being, just the primary reason being, is that you build a house of cards when you do this. Okay, I think Matthew Roach has had some blog posts on this. I've seen other people talk about this. What ends up happening is the exact same reason why, like, Excel workbooks won't save when you create a circular reference, or you create all these different issues. That circular reference that can occur by loading data from Power BI back into SQL Server can be an insidious thing that will destroy the companies that you work for. And if you think I'm kidding, I am not. Some of the reasons for the banking and financial collapse of like the early 2000s were because risk evaluations were based off of formulas that were put in Excel spreadsheets for managing billions or trillions of dollars. And inside those Excel spreadsheets, there were errors and circular logic reference that even Excel wasn't able to realize it was doing, right? There's some just logical fallacies that can get created if you go from SQL Server, right, into Power BI, and then you take those results and you load them back into SQL Server. Now, I know what you're saying. You have created a measure in SQL Server that is, or I'm sorry, inside of Power BI or inside of analysis services, that's just, it's hard or nearly impossible to create in SQL Server. And you want to be able to share that out, and you want other people to be able to use it and reference it. Here's the deal. You're going to have to do the work to create that calculation in that lower environment. Okay. And that will be harder. Like, that is the reason for analysis services. That's the reason for Power BI, is that front end calculation, you can do some incredibly powerful dynamic things there. All right. So straight up, you can do incredible things in Power BI and analysis services data sets. I just froze again. Hold on. Going my other cam here. Should be better. All right. So while you can create those things, and while Anakresh is 100% correct here in his solution, this is something that we should not be going to. Okay. Because what ends up happening is you create, you load all this data into SQL Server, and then all of a sudden you start to build logic that becomes circular in reference, so that as those calculations flow through, they come into SQL Server, they do a calculation, they make their way into Power BI, they do another calculation, then they circle back into SQL Server. And then every time you run it, it ends up producing a different result that grows and grows and feeds on each other. Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, Chris, I can do this without having any problems. I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional. I'm super smart. I'm super sharp. But I got horrible news for you. The work that you're doing today is going to live on in tomorrow. Okay? You're not going to be the only one who's going to be out there building and supporting this content. This is going to be run and operated and managed for days, months, weeks, years after you leave the service. Okay? So you're going to be in there and you're going to build it out, and you as an individual are going to know what this means, right? Like, oh, that I can't make these additional connections. I can't do these other references because I've brought it back into my system, and I can't keep doing this, right? Because that means every time I run it, I get a different answer. Here's the problem. These environments and these systems that we build out are incredibly complex. The second you start to do this, you will immediately transition this stuff into someone else, or someone else will start to run and do something with it, and it will immediately grow out of your control and become a horrible mess for you. Okay, I guarantee it. I've seen it in marketing teams that I've worked with, had a practice of evaluating their marketing spend to determine what was a successful marketing campaign and what was a non-successful marketing campaign. They had a circular logic that sent that stuff back in, and you know what happened? It meant every time we ran the load process, each marketing campaign got a little bit better and a little bit better, to the point where marketing campaigns, no matter what, just seemed to always just produce a positive result. Yeah, there were some losses, but it kept going up. So, they thought, hey, we're doing a good job. No matter what we do, pat on the back, good job, team. We're a success. The answer was no. You were not a success. You had circular logic in your environment that made it so that it was almost impossible for you to realize that the marketing efforts that you were doing, and and thus the downstream business implications of the decisions you were making from that information, were wrong. This was a small company who spent millions and millions of dollars on defunct and unprofitable marketing campaigns because they didn't realize that they had these issues. And this stuff will happen time and time again at every company you're at, in any situation. You should never, ever do this. And I know you want to. I know that data that you've created inside of Power BI is super powerful. It's super useful. You want to bring that back and you want to use it in. I am terribly sorry. You need to take a step back, right? You need to not start in Power BI. You need to start at that SQL Server, or you need to start at that source system. And you need to do the lifting and the heavy lifting, do that calculation at that lower layer, and then allow it to go into Power BI. All right? There's just no other real valuable way to do this, okay? All right? Now, those are the reasons why you should never, ever send that stuff back. Now, and I'm going to illustrate this again. This is a poison to your analytics environment if you do this. But just like poisons have a use for treating terminally ill cancer patients, right? Cancer patients who if dramatic efforts are not taken, they are going to die. Doctors, trained professionals, right? People who went to school for a very long time and really know what they're doing. They'll give those patients chemotherapy under closely supervised situations. They will exceedingly, they'll watch very carefully all the white blood counts. They'll watch their health, they'll watch their blood pressure, they'll watch their weight, they'll watch everything about that patient as they're giving that chemotherapy in a desperate attempt to save their lives. And sometimes they'll be successful, right? And we've got great doctors in this world that will do anything to make sure that their patients live. And that is, God bless them. Cancer is an evil, evil thing. And these doctors are fighting the good fight. In the analytics space, we have to be on the lookout for how we use these tools and use this functionality. Because while it is possible to do that, most of the people who work inside of Power BI and design business intelligence and data solutions are not experts who have dedicated their lives to these solutions and dedicated their lives to making sure that that patient lives, right? Because even those experts who are dedicated to making sure that that patient lives is going to suffer losses. Some of the patients are going to die, and it's a tragic, awful thing. The same thing is true in these analytical solutions where you send that data back. If you're not dialed in on it, you can kill your analytical platform, you can kill your credibility, and it is super important that you are exorbitantly limited in who does this, in what conditions you allow this to happen, or you even consider using this tool. So for the majority of the people who are out there watching this in a replay, coming through and watching what's going on in this, please understand, I'm on your side. I want to help and enable you to use any and all the functionality that's really out there when it comes to Power BI, SQL Server, doing analytics. I want to help you come up with great solutions that help you help your companies and solve these needs. There, like, no doubt about it, I want to help you. But this is one of those things where if it was possible to say that only by prescription, by certain professionals were allowed to come through and watch this stuff, would I ever consider saying you should allow people to do this? All right. Now, when I say that, there are a handful of reasons for why you would send data back. And while someone may come along and leave a comment below if I'm wrong, but um go down there and put in a comment, like leave in the chat as to why you should do this. But these are the reasons why, and frankly, the only reasons I think it's acceptable to send that information back into SQL Server. Number one, it's data validation and testing. All right. So you have your, you have your load process. You've got you land your data, you curate it, you process it, you load it into your conform dimensions, and then you load it into SQL Server. But the ongoing always question is your data valid and is it right? Often you'll need to, if you're building out automation to make sure your analytical landscape is always right, is always accurate. Often the tools when it comes to automating the information and keeping an eye on that have really struggled when it comes to connecting to analytical front end. Then you can radically simplify that by taking that data out of your analytical front end and loading it into a testing and validation framework inside of your SQL environment. This can allow you to easily confirm and monitor when there are breaks in business rules, breaks in different test case scenarios, and you can do things like okay, there should always be in excess of 100 salespeople, and so if my downstream measure is ever less than 100 salespeople, I want to trigger an alert, right? That can, having that in SQL Server, that can be very effective for you. Now, you can do that in Power BI, but you can build out a very rich, ecosystem of automatically testing things as they go along through your environment by having that downstream information inside that aggregated space. Or specifically, you could have triggers for loads. For example, you could define a threshold that I'm never going to see like a 70% decrease in salespeople from my previous load. So if you have that number of salespeople in your SQL environment, when a load finishes, it can do a quick check to determine how many people did I just load today? How many people do I have in my analysis services? If what was just loaded happened to be less than 70% of what was in analysis services or in Power BI, oh, you don't do a load. You alert your data engineers that you have an issue, right? That is a valid use case, right? That can really help ensure that the framework that you have is up and running and that the information you have is correct. All right. Um, Other than that, there are, I honestly struggle and am challenged to think of any other reason why you would want to send that back. I mean, maybe there's some out there, and again, like post a comment or a comment out there. But honestly, it is such a poison to your environment. I mean, and trust me, I'm saying this because I have fallen prey for this. I thought I knew how to manage and make this work and make this be something that you could do and you could rely upon. And and I was wrong. All right. I caused no end of misery and pain for myself that I had to unwind and retrofit and fix. All right. And only because I was so closely watching it was I able to find these things, pull this stuff back out and calculate and correct. And it was a very bad situation that could have led my business users and the leaders in my company to be making the worst wrong information. All right. Um, do not ever do that stuff. Now if you're talking about like, hey, I want to build out data flows that are used by Power BI, and I want to take that data flow and then instead, like, I want to promote that up and I want to put that in my data warehouse or want to put that in SQL Server. All right, that is kind of a different thing than capturing measures and analytics. Okay, so I think I saw a chat about data flow. Even there, I guess I would kind of encourage you to take that data flow, take that M code out of your Power BI data flow, drop that in a data factory data wrangling tool, and then load it into your SQL server. That is a much better solution. And then make your SQL server that source uh, for the information that's being used in Power BI. Feed that into the data flow. Uh, Kind of the reason being you can start to do all sorts of additional things to that data source that is now in SQL Server, primarily creating consistent surrogate keys that persist over time. That'll really help when it comes to your performance. But when it comes to sending information back into your system, especially when it comes to measures, calculated items, that's just no. Just don't. I know the allure. Don't do that. Okay. Um, uh, the same thing is really true for lots of tools and functionalities inside of the Power Platform. While 99% of the tools and functionality is fine, and everyone should start experimenting and playing with it. And I regret that I don't have this PowerPoint up, but there is a pyramid of governance around self-service BI. You talk about the individual, the team, the department, and the enterprise. And if you're looking at something that is what can be used by an individual or a small team, there are more options that are available for you at those lower layers. But as you start to go up into a business unit or an enterprise, there's a lot of things that ad hoc or those lower level uses that you just simply cannot do. And straight up, you have to be exorbitantly careful of features like this because they'll start out small and then they'll shoot right up into the enterprise. And the executives will say, well, can't you just load the data from Power BI? Can't you just calculate this? And you'll be 100%, you'll be 100% wanting to make that happen, right? You'll want to make that happen. And the answer, we talk about this all the time at work, if an executive says, can't you just, the answer should almost always be no, until you think about it and make sure that it makes sense. Because in situations like this, the answer is no. Create all sorts of issues. And I see uh, there's a chat in the comments about you know making it easier for small teams without a budget. I guarantee you what they really don't have a budget for is 3 years down the line when it comes to unwinding it, and the decisions that are being made off of that bad decision are causing them those millions of dollars in mistakes when it comes to how they're choosing to spend, how they're choosing to allocate resources, how they're choosing to hire and fire. I mean, I promise you, I have seen companies. I have been there. I've seen it happen where they take information that they don't understand how it's being calculated, and not just on marketing spending millions of dollars on things that don't make money, but I've seen them fire people because executives and managers didn't understand the information, didn't understand what they were looking for, and they fired people. And that has radical impact on people's lives. We not as professionals in this space, we have to be on top of our game, and we have to be sending people down the right path. I know people, and especially small companies, are going to push you for that. And I know that there are some companies out there that will hire you as a consultant who, if you're watching this, hey, you're a hired gun. I've hired you to commit data murder. And that is okay. You've been hired to commit data murder, but got to push them to create the right solution, which is to take the little bit of time it takes to build that out at the start to ensure that your flow and your outcomes are going to be valid on an ongoing basis. Okay. Um, and there are other pieces inside the Power BI solution that are definitively like this. The first one that comes to mind, and uh, you know, I'm going to say that this is only because let me see if I can go back to my main camera. Nope. This is only because um, uh, there is, and this is a new feature, and Microsoft is exceedingly good at. Did I freeze there too? Oh no, I didn't. Okay. Microsoft is good at rolling out things that are an MVP deployment. Okay, they're okay. They get it out there. They get feedback. They start to evolve it, and then they make it better. And then they get it. They get feedback, and then it starts to become enterprise grade. And I always say it goes from suck to okay to enterprise grade, right? And especially in Power BI, and especially with the service, how they do. I mean, the Power BI service has multiple releases a week. The Power BI desktop has releases once a month. I mean, their release cadence to resolve issues and to go from suck to at least okay is exorbitantly good, right? Like, in fact, they're why I stopped using Tableau, and why I stopped using all these other tools is their ability to respond to real issues is excellent. All right, but there's some bigger rocks out there that it's going to take them a while, right? So, for example, Power BI composite models in 5 years, it will be the only world in which we know. I fully believe that anyone and everyone, every model you touch will be a composite model. You won't work with a pure centralized model in 5 years, right? I would be surprised if there's 20% of reports that came off of a pure singular model. Everything will be from a composite model in 5 years. But today, there are real challenges with Power BI composite models in getting performance, in getting usability, and in tracking usage, in tracking security, in tracking access. in resolving issues, in resolving conflicts. I mean, just there is a ton of issues in that initial deployment that we are, and the team is 100% dedicated to working through. So don't get me wrong, it's something that we and small teams and small individuals should 100% be using to make advances to do things on those larger enterprise models. But if you go above that individual or small team level, composite models cannot be a solution for you unless you are exorbitantly sure you know intimately what you're doing with the composite model, okay? And the reality is the number and the percentage of people who understand how the tabular engine works and how adding in a composite model really works and impacts the performance and everything, then the number of people that are out there is incredibly small. I'm not one of those people. I can't even get, I mean, I can get some of the stuff to work. I mean, I can get composite models to work, but can I get them to perform? Can I get them to, troubleshoot issues? It's very difficult. Okay. So composite models is with direct query against, other models. That's one thing that today unless you really know what you're doing and you're a professional, don't. I know you want to, and you're gonna see people talking about how great it is. Don't. Okay, just don't. All right, not yet. Coming. All right, and I'm sure it's coming. No doubt it's coming. Um, the other thing, and I actually even saw. I think I don't remember if it was Marco Russo or Alberto Ferrari. One of them mentioned this in a Guy in the Cube like live stream. But they said if you're going to do direct query against the source, you should have to be certified, in how to make that work. And that's another feature that everyone thinks, oh, hey, great. I want live data. I'll just put on direct query and, there we go. Bob's your uncle. I'm all done. I now have live data flowing into my Power BI and everything's all great. Except you're doing live query against one big table that's 800 columns wide, 18 billion records long, takes up terabytes of information. And gee, surprise, surprise, you don't get any good performance. You're not able to get query folding. You have all sorts of issues when it comes to loading to actually, you don't deal with query for whatever. There's all sorts of problems when it comes to doing direct query. On the comment in the live streaming Guy Cube, it was, hey, all you're doing is querying that that star schema on the back end. And if you're not querying a star schema on the back end, and where that source is as performant as memory in Power BI, your front end users are going to have a bad time. That means you have to be incredibly careful around how you build out your direct query and how you manage that on the front end. All right. Now, that's an instance where today you need to have like a doctorate and like you need to be blessed by Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari should come down and they should interview you and they should bless you and say yes, you are allowed to do a direct query in this. I know they can't do that, and I guess you could pay them, but generally speaking, they're not going to do that, right? Generally speaking, there's no way to stop people, but that's how these things should work today. Tomorrow, and we know this is coming at some point in time. And when I say tomorrow, I don't mean like Sunday, August 1st. I'm saying tomorrow in the next month or two or whatever it is. We know Christian Wade showed us that they're going to have Power BI aggregations against live data sources. Well, that's going to start to change the entire world when it comes to doing that direct query, right? So all of a sudden, in today's world, you have to be a professional to do that, right? Tomorrow, when these aggregations get in place, and we're going to have to play with that before, to know if it's in the suck or okay space. Maybe it's enterprise grade, but we're going to have to play with it, right? But tomorrow, when that's in and it's up and it's running, you're going to be able to go in and say, and this will be almost anyone, right? Hey, I want to do a live query against this. I want to tune up my Power BI aggregations as such, with some drag and drop sliders. I think they have it as. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but you're gonna configure your auto aggregations, and it's just going to work. And then you're going to be able to use that direct query against, anyone will be able to use direct query against the data source and it'll be fine, right? But that's not today. Right? So we can't recommend that solution to anyone until we get a solution that can be done by, quote unquote, everyone, right? So same thing is true on composite models. Same thing is true on this Power BI into SQL server, right? You need to have that governance, that oversight, that vision, and that understanding of your environment to understand how and why and where that's useful. Otherwise, you just can, if you're trying to take Power BI data and load that into SQL Server, especially from data sets, you're just going to create this circle reference architecture that's just going to become a house of cards where you're going to pull one little thing out of there, the whole thing is going to collapse on you. And it's not going to be today, right? It's not going to be when you implement the solution. And it won't happen a week from now. It won't happen a month from now, probably. Heck, you might get a few years, where everything seems like it's running fine. But then that day will come. And all of a sudden, you'll be going through the data, you'll be doing some data checks, you'll be walking through some code, and you'll realize, that there is a circular reference, and these numbers aren't calculating outright, and that you are just growing it, and that every time it runs, it's going to grow no matter what, or shrink no matter what, or change randomly. And then it'll be too late. Because then you'll have hundreds of these things. You'll have data loads that build on data loads, 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 that build on data loads. And that snowball will destroy the credibility of your data platform, destroy your credibility. Good news, I mean, I guess you can always move on to another job. Everybody's hiring. But we need to be professionals and we need to fight against these. We need to rage against these bad designs. We need to push back. We need to hammer down. We've got to build sustainable solutions that will support our enterprises and our companies and our customers. They're counting on us. The work we do isn't easy. It's not inexpensive. They have to drive positive ROI from it. They've got to save money. They've got to make money off of the insights they gain. And that means the information that we give them has to be correct. We can't build out systems that have these circular references, that have this circular logic, that create these challenges. All right? So, please, I'm going to share this link inside of the chat. I want you to go over and do watch this video. This is technically how you do this, okay? There's no doubt that this is an execution that you can do. But don't do this unless you have that specific stated purpose. Like, I'm doing validation checks, and you isolate out your data load information from your downstream information, either by schema, by having a different database, or something. Don't do this, okay? And for for the majority of people out there, this is just something we have to keep our eye out for. Hey, Nicholas. Oh, what's going on, man? I'm sorry for being so passionate about this. The times I've caught this, the times I've had to unwind this, have almost always been after we realized that there was like in a code when it was with marketing, I found it in a code review of a solution that had been out there for years, and I was like, wait a minute. I was realizing that the results were coming out and they were wrong. And I dug into it and I realized, oh my gosh, this company and this marketing team unbeknownst to them, right? These are good people. They weren't trying to do anything wrong or nefarious, but the information that they were getting were leading them to make bad decisions and over again. And some of those marketing decisions and those poor marketing decisions contributed to that company going out of business. There's like I think it was like 2,500 people that worked at that company at the time. They're no longer there anymore. Part of the reason was that, right? The other times I've caught this where as executive leaders, we're about to, implement a new, incentive structure. Well, I caught this, and actually, it would have resulted in everyone in their sales staff making less money than they should be. Now, I'm going to guess the salespeople would have figured it out and would have been pissed, but it would have taken them some time, right? That 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 would have had a horrible negative effect on that organization if I hadn't caught those, right? And I've seen this time and time again. I've seen other people run into these things. Please, uh, please don't do this, okay? Again, there's needs sometimes, right? I fully think you should build out data validation automation that should, be refreshing your models, refreshing your data that's based upon when data loads meet business requirements and are within business parameters, right? And a great way to do that is to, in a validation schema, load the measures back from analysis service across business dimensions, right? So you can say, at each of these offices, these are the number of employees, right? And that at no point in time is there, if I ever see, a 50% decrease, don't load, right? Or if it's an 80% decrease, load, but alert the data engineers that there might be an issue. That's awesome, right? Build that out. You should have that as part of your system. I 100% believe that you should build that into your framework so that the data streaming in is high quality and that, if there's ever an issue, your data engineering teams and your cleansing teams are aware of it and they're on it and they can take the necessary steps to address the issue. But you're not doing that, don't do this, right? Um, uh, like, this can just create issues and problems for you. And like I said, it might not be today. It could be down the road, or in fact, it will be, right? I know it will be, right? And I know if you're a consultant and you're just here for a month, right? They got you on a 90-day engagement or something like that, and they're going to pay you $100 an hour to do something, and you think, why the heck not? Why? Happy, I want to get that extension out another 90 days. I'll do whatever they tell me to do. And that's the strategy. But it's also the strategy of why like people hate consultants, right? I mean, I was a consultant. I like to think that the reason I was successful was because I didn't do the things that people just blindly told me to do. That I took the time to push back and say, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? It depends. Show me why. And then sometimes the answer is no. This is not the solution. What we're going to do instead of this is we're going to do this. And here is why. We're not going to take from a Power BI data set, load that back in because we're going to create a circular logic reference. And that's going to have downstream impacts. Every time we run and load, it's going to produce a different number. And that inconsistency is going to be a problem, right? In this situation. But we need to have that conversation. I was very lucky. At one point in time, I was on a very large project for a very large company that was critical to the organization's ongoing daily operations. If we were not successful, the federal government could shut them down. I mean, just close the doors, 50,000 people out of work. And so I was on a team that was helping make sure that we kept the lights on. A around every quarter we had special releases to the federal government in which they asked for crazy. The government asked for crazy things, and like we just had to respond. And I was put on a fire team to help meet those needs. And the reason I was put on the fire team was because I would push back. I'd say no. That's when the people business analysts or PMs would come in with the solution and they say this is where we need to be and we're going to do it like this. I'd come in and say okay, well this is where we need to be, but we can't do it like this because that's going to cause a problem like this, and we're going to do it like that. And I was on the fire team for 2 or 3 quarterly releases, and it turned out I didn't know this at the time, but like the business leaders that were on this fire team was the old CFO who had just recently retired. It was the head of Moody's, and it was another couple other huge big names in business. And I guess probably if I would have known who they were, I might not have pushed back, but I don't know. Everyone is just a person. Everyone is just, we're all fallible. So I think it was very important, even in those situations, to listen to what they have to say and say, hey, I don't think that's right. I think we should do this, and here's why, right? Again, the reason we don't do this is the circular reference, and the way we solve it is by start at the source, bring that into the SQL Server, or bring that into wherever your data is going to be, process it and do that load there, and then allow that to flow on into your analysis. All right. So thank you. I guess this was my rant for the day. I really do appreciate and it Krish. I'm butchering your name. I apologize. Please subscribe to his channel. This is structurally sound what he's talking about here. So please get in there and check this out. But and come out to the Data God site. Wynn Hopkins is the Data God of the week. Johnny Winter, was the Data God of last week. These are, all these people that are out here are incredible people that are working and producing information and putting out content into the data sphere. I truly believe we should go out, lean on each other, grow from our mistakes, learn from each other, and follow the people out here that are doing good content. But when and God knows, please, if I ever say something that you guys are opposed to, please let me know. Hopefully, I'm not going to be horribly awry, but I make mistakes too. There's no doubt about it. But follow these people out here, out on Kratos BI. Check these guys out. I don't know if you've been out there and seen all of the people that are here, but I think I've got over 50 of them right now that have been so far identified. I'm aggressively working on rolling out some more, so please go out, check them out, follow them, subscribe to them. Let's grow, learn, and operate together. Thank you guys all so very much for joining me today. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to my rant. Peace.